Hey everyone, welcome to Midnight Mystic Stories. I noticed a lot of you who are watching and enjoying the content aren't subscribed yet. If you love spine-chilling stories, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It really helps the channel grow and helps us keep bringing more of the content you love. And be sure to comment below where you are tuning in from. Thank you and enjoy the video. I've been using Tinder for a while, mostly swiping out of boredom. It was a way to kill time on my commute, a low-stakes game of judging faces and witty bios. I wasn't really looking for anything serious, just maybe a decent conversation or a casual date. I matched with this guy named Alex, and his profile seemed normal enough. He had a couple of pictures of him hiking, another with his dog, and his bio said he was a software engineer who loves the outdoors. Seemed like a safe bet, right? We chatted for a few days, and he was surprisingly engaging. He wasn't just throwing out the usual tired pickup lines. He actually seemed interested in what I had to say. We talked about our favorite books, our dream travel destinations, and even some of our more embarrassing childhood memories. He seemed genuinely kind and intelligent. After a week, he suggested we meet up for coffee. I hesitated for a moment. Usually, I'm all for meeting up quickly, but something about Alex felt a little intense. But I pushed the feeling aside, figuring I was just being paranoid. It's just coffee, I told myself. What's the worst that could happen? We met at a small cafe near my apartment. He was exactly as he looked in his pictures, maybe even a little more attractive in person. We talked for a couple of hours, and the conversation flowed easily. He was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. I started to relax and think that maybe I had finally found a decent guy on Tinder. But then, he started asking questions about my apartment. Harmless questions at first, like how long I'd lived there and if I liked the neighborhood. But then they got more specific. He asked what floor I lived on, if I had a balcony, and what kind of security system the building had. I started to feel that familiar prickle of unease. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that he was just being curious. But the questions kept coming, each one more invasive than the last. He asked if I lived alone, if I had any roommates, and what my daily routine was like. I started to feel like I was being interrogated. I finally decided to change the subject, but he kept steering the conversation back to my apartment. He even started talking about how much he liked the neighborhood and how convenient it was to everything. It was starting to freak me out. When we left the cafe, he walked me back towards my apartment. I tried to make small talk, but he just kept staring at my building, his eyes scanning every window and doorway. As we reached the entrance, he stopped and turned to me, a strange smile on his face. "I've had a really great time," he said, his voice low and husky. "I can't wait to see you again." I forced a smile and mumbled something about being busy. I just wanted to get away from him. "Maybe I could come over sometime," he asked, his eyes locking onto mine. "We could watch a movie or something." I panicked. "I don't think so," I stammered. "I'm really busy with work." He didn't say anything, just kept staring at me with that unsettling smile. I finally managed to break eye contact and quickly unlocked the door to my building. As I hurried inside, I glanced back and saw him still standing there, watching me. I ran up to my apartment, locked the door, and peered through the peephole. He was gone. I let out a shaky breath and tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. Maybe he was just a little awkward and overly eager, but the feeling of unease wouldn't go away. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That night, I had trouble sleeping. Every creak and groan of the building sent shivers down my spine. I kept imagining Alex standing outside my window, watching me. The next morning, I woke up to a strange noise coming from outside my apartment. I cautiously peeked through the peephole and froze. Standing in the hallway, right outside my door, was Alex. He was just standing there, staring at my door, his face expressionless. I slammed the peephole shut and backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to do. I was terrified. I grabbed my phone and called the police. While I waited for them to arrive, I kept peering through the peephole, watching Alex. He didn't move, just stood there, silently staring. When the police finally arrived, they took Alex into custody. I later found out that he had a history of stalking and had been arrested multiple times for similar offenses. He had apparently been using Tinder to find potential victims. I was lucky. I got away before anything truly terrible happened, but the experience left me shaken and paranoid. I deleted Tinder and haven't used a dating app since. I still think about Alex sometimes, and I still get that feeling of being watched. It's a reminder that sometimes the people we meet online aren't who they seem to be, and that even the most innocent-seeming interactions can turn into something terrifying. The scariest part is knowing that this actually happened to me. This wasn't some fictional horror story. This was my reality. Okay, so I am usually pretty good at reading people. I wouldn't say I am psychic or anything, but I have a decent intuition. My gut is rarely wrong. And yet, there was this one time on Tinder. Yeah, this guy, Liam, completely threw me for a loop, and I ignored every single red flag my internal alarm was blaring. And let me tell you, I paid the price. I'd been on Tinder for a while, mostly looking for something casual. I wasn't actively hunting for the one, but I wasn't opposed to it if the right person came along. Liam's profile was intriguing. He had these piercing blue eyes and a brooding expression that I usually find a bit try-hard, but something about him just drew me in. His bio was vague, just a quote from some obscure poet, and the words, "looking for someone real." Okay, edgy, I thought, but I swiped right anyway. We matched instantly, and the conversation started flowing pretty quickly. He was charming, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. He asked thoughtful questions, listened attentively, and even remembered little details I'd mentioned in passing. It was all very flattering, almost too good to be true. That should have been red flag number one. I mean, I am an okay person, but I am not that amazing that someone would fall for me that hard, that fast. But I ignored it. He suggested we meet up after a few days of chatting. He proposed this cute little coffee shop downtown, which seemed safe enough. I told a friend where I was going and what he looked like. Standard Tinder safety protocol. But even leading up to the date, there were little things that made me uneasy. He was a bit too eager, texting me constantly, wanting to know my every move. He also started asking increasingly personal questions about my past, my family, and my living situation. Again, red flags galore, but I was blinded by his charm and the attention he was giving me. The day of the date, I was a nervous wreck. I spent hours picking out the perfect outfit, doing my hair and makeup, trying to convince myself that I wasn't making a mistake. When I finally arrived at the coffee shop, Liam was already there, waiting for me at a table by the window. He stood up as I approached, and I have to admit, he was even more attractive in person. But as I got closer, I noticed something that sent a shiver down my spine, his eyes. They were intense, almost unsettlingly so, and there was a strange emptiness behind them that I hadn't noticed in his photos. But I brushed it off, blaming it on nerves. We ordered our drinks and started talking. At first, the conversation was normal, just getting to know you stuff. But then, Liam started steering the conversation in a darker direction. He began talking about his troubled childhood, his difficult relationships, and his struggles with depression. I tried to be empathetic, but his stories were so intense and graphic that I started to feel uncomfortable. He also kept staring at me in a way that made me feel like I was being dissected. It was like he was trying to see through me, to uncover my deepest, darkest secrets. And then he started asking about my fears. Not just generic fears like spiders or heights, but deep-seated, existential fears about life, death, and the unknown. He wanted to know what kept me up at night, what haunted my dreams. I hesitated to answer, but he was so persistent, so insistent, that I eventually caved and shared a few of my anxieties. Big mistake. As soon as I opened up, his demeanor changed. He became even more intense, his eyes burning into me with a predatory gleam. He started whispering things, barely audible, about how he understood my fears, how he could help me overcome them, how he could make them disappear. I was completely creeped out. My gut was screaming at me to run, but I was frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. I managed to stammer out that I had to go, that I wasn't feeling well. Liam's face twisted into a mask of anger. He grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong, and hissed, "You can't leave. We're just getting started." I panicked. I yanked my hand away from him and ran out of the coffee shop, not stopping until I reached my car. I drove home in a daze, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just narrowly escaped something terrible. The next few days were a nightmare. Liam wouldn't stop texting and calling me, leaving increasingly disturbing messages. He knew where I lived, what I did, who my friends were. It was like he had been stalking me even before we met. I went to the police, but they said there wasn't much they could do since he hadn't physically harmed me. They advised me to block his number and social media accounts and to avoid going out alone. I followed their advice, but I still felt like I was being watched. I started having nightmares about Liam, about him chasing me, about him catching me. I was terrified to leave my apartment. Eventually, after weeks of torment, Liam finally stopped contacting me. I don't know why he gave up, but I am grateful that he did. I never went back on Tinder. I learned my lesson. Trust your gut, people. It's usually right. I ignored all the warning signs with Liam, and I almost paid a terrible price. Sometimes, that feeling of unease is there for a reason. Listen to it. It could save your life. Okay, so picture this. Me, fresh out of a really brutal breakup, convinced that the only way to move on was to dive headfirst into the dating pool. Or, more accurately, the Tinder puddle. I wasn't looking for love. Definitely not a relationship. Just distraction. A confidence boost, maybe. Bad idea, I know. But hindsight is 20/20, right? I swiped with reckless abandon. It felt like a game, matching and chatting with a bunch of guys I would normally never even glance at twice. Most of them were forgettable. The usual mix of gym selfies, fishing photos, and guys who thought, "Hey," was an acceptable opening line. Then I matched with Liam. His profile was different. No pose shots, no bragging. Just a few candid photos of him hiking, playing guitar, and one really cool one of him silhouetted against a sunset. His bio was simple. Looking for good conversation and maybe a hiking buddy. No pressure. He seemed normal. Refreshingly so. We started chatting, and he was genuinely interesting. He asked about my interests, actually listened to my answers, and didn't bombard me with cheesy pickup lines. We talked about everything from our favorite books to our dream travel destinations. He was funny, intelligent, and surprisingly down to earth. After a few days of chatting, he suggested we meet up for a hike. I hesitated. Meeting someone from Tinder always felt a little risky, but Liam seemed different. He wasn't pushy or aggressive, and we'd already established a pretty good connection online. Plus, I really did need to get out of the house. So I agreed. We decided on a popular trail just outside of town, somewhere with plenty of other hikers around. I sent a screenshot of his profile and our conversation to my best friend, along with the details of our hike, just in case. You know, standard Tinder safety precautions. The day of the hike, I was actually excited. I hadn't felt that way in months. Liam was even more attractive in person. He had this easy smile and a genuine warmth that made me feel instantly comfortable. We started hiking, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. He was even more interesting than he seemed online. He talked about his passion for photography, his love for the outdoors, and his volunteer work at a local animal shelter. We laughed, we shared stories, and for a few hours, I actually forgot about my ex and all the drama that came with him. As we hiked deeper into the woods, the trail became less crowded. The other hikers thinned out, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the chirping of birds. It was peaceful, serene. But then, Liam started acting strange. He became quieter, more withdrawn. He kept glancing around, as if he was expecting someone or something. I asked him if everything was okay, but he just brushed it off, saying he was just enjoying the scenery. But I could tell something was off. We reached a secluded clearing with a stunning view of the valley below. Liam stopped, took a deep breath, and turned to face me. His eyes were different. They were darker, more intense, and there was a strange glint in them that I hadn't seen before. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice low and serious. My heart started pounding. This was it, the moment where the charming Tinder guy revealed his true, creepy self. "Okay," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice trembled slightly. He took a step closer to me, and I instinctively took a step back. "I haven't been entirely honest with you," he said. "About what?" I asked, my mind racing. Was he married? A convicted felon? A vampire? About who I really am. He reached into his backpack and pulled out something that made my blood run cold. It was a hunting knife. Not a small pocket knife, but a large, serrated blade that glinted ominously in the sunlight. I gasped and stumbled backward, my eyes wide with terror. "What are you doing?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer. He just stared at me, his eyes filled with a chilling intensity. He took another step closer, and I knew I had to get out of there. I turned and ran, as fast as I could, back the way we had come. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps pounding on the trail. I didn't dare look back. I just kept running, my lungs burning, my legs aching. I ran until I reached the main trail, where other hikers were still milling about. I collapsed onto a bench, gasping for air, my body shaking uncontrollably. Liam was gone. I didn't see him anywhere. I sat there for a long time, trying to catch my breath and calm my racing heart. Eventually, I managed to pull out my phone and call the police. I told them everything that had happened, but they seemed skeptical. They said they would investigate, but they couldn't promise anything. They searched the trail, but they didn't find Liam or the knife. I went home that day, completely shaken. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. I deleted Tinder, wiped my social media, and barricaded myself in my apartment. I was terrified that Liam would come after me. Days turned into weeks, and I slowly started to feel a little safer. Maybe he was just trying to scare me. Maybe he had changed his mind. Maybe he had moved on to someone else. But then, I started getting messages. Anonymous texts, emails, and even handwritten letters delivered to my apartment. They were all the same, cryptic, threatening, and filled with disturbing details about my life. They knew where I lived, where I worked, who my friends were. They were watching me. I went back to the police, but they said there was nothing they could do unless Liam actually harmed me. I was on my own. I moved again, changed my number again, and tried to start over. But the messages kept coming. No matter where I went, no matter what I did, they always found me. It's been years since that hike, and I still live in constant fear. I never know when Liam will show up again. I never know what he's planning. All I know is that he's out there, watching me, waiting. And that's why I'll never use Tinder again. That hike, what happened next, still haunts my dreams. I used to think Tinder horror stories were made up until it happened to me. Before this, my worst dating app experience involved a guy who wore socks with sandals and mansplained astrophysics. Annoying, sure, but not terrifying. I was naive. I really thought the internet exaggerated everything. Now I know better. It started innocently enough. I matched with Liam. His profile was pretty standard. A couple of decent-looking photos, a bio that said he liked hiking and craft beer. The usual stuff. We chatted for a few days, and he seemed normal, maybe a little introverted, but nothing alarming. He suggested meeting for coffee, and I agreed. Broad daylight, public place. What could go wrong? The coffee date was fine. Liam was a little awkward, didn't make a ton of eye contact, but he was polite. We talked about our jobs, hobbies, the weather, totally vanilla. There wasn't any instant chemistry, but I didn't get any red flags either. At the end of the date, he walked me to my car and asked if I wanted to hang out again sometime. I wasn't thrilled, but I didn't want to be rude, so I said maybe. That's when things started to get weird. The next day, I got a text from Liam. Had a great time yesterday. Hope you did too. Standard follow-up. I replied, yeah, it was nice. Thanks, and thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Over the next few days, Liam started texting me constantly. Not just a message or two, but dozens. If I didn't reply within a few minutes, he'd send more, asking if I was okay, if I was mad at him, what I was doing. It was suffocating. I tried to gently tell him that I was busy and couldn't always respond right away, but he didn't seem to get it. He just kept texting, the messages getting increasingly needy and insecure. Then, the messages started getting personal. Really personal. Stuff I hadn't told him. Stuff I hadn't told anyone. He mentioned a specific necklace I wear, one I almost always keep hidden under my shirt because it was from my late grandma. He knew the name of my childhood pet rabbit. He knew the street I grew up on. How could he know these things? I freaked out. I blocked his number, deleted him from Tinder, and changed all my social media settings to private. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was so wrong. A few days later, I started getting anonymous phone calls. Just silence on the other end. They'd come at all hours of the day and night, sometimes several times an hour. I knew it was him. I just knew it. I changed my number again, but the calls kept coming. He was finding ways to get to me, to let me know he was still there. Then came the real kicker. I live alone in a small apartment. One evening, I came home from work to find my front door slightly ajar. My heart leaped into my throat. I cautiously pushed the door open and stepped inside. The apartment was dark and silent. Everything seemed normal at first glance, but then I noticed it. A single, white rose lying on my bed. I didn't touch it. I backed out of the apartment, ran to my car, and called the police. They came and searched the place, but found nothing else. No sign of forced entry, no fingerprints, nothing. They took the rose as evidence, but they said there wasn't much they could do without more information. They suggested I get a restraining order, which I did. The restraining order didn't stop him. The next few weeks were a living hell. I'd find little things out of place in my apartment. A book moved. A picture turned upside down. I started seeing him everywhere. In the grocery store, at the gym, walking down the street. He never approached me. Never said anything, just watched. It was like he was a ghost. Always there, always lurking. I was terrified to sleep. Terrified to leave my apartment. Terrified to do anything. I was a prisoner in my own life. I installed security cameras, changed my locks, and started carrying pepper spray everywhere I went. I was constantly on edge, always looking over my shoulder. One night, I woke up to a scratching sound outside my bedroom window. I slowly sat up in bed, my heart pounding. I peered through the blinds and saw him standing there in the darkness, staring up at me. He was holding something in his hand, but I couldn't make out what it was. I screamed and ran to the living room, grabbed my phone, and called 911. While I was on the phone, I heard the window break. I screamed again and ran out of the apartment, into the hallway, and pounded on my neighbor's door. Thankfully, they opened it and let me in. The police arrived within minutes and apprehended Liam. He was charged with stalking, harassment, and violating the restraining order. They found a knife on him. I shudder to think what he would have done if he had gotten to me. He's in jail now, awaiting trial. I'm still traumatized. I've moved to a new city, changed my name, and started therapy. I'll probably never use a dating app again. I used to think Tinder horror stories were made up. Now I know they're real, and I'm living proof. I'm sure that my story isn't unique. There are far more chilling Tinder stories. This is just my story that I will never forget. It wasn't just about a bad date. It was about survival. I wish someone had warned me about the profile pictures, not the obviously fake ones, or the shirtless gym selfies, or even the guys holding fish. Seriously, what is up with that? I mean the subtly wrong ones. The ones that look normal at first glance, but after a while, prickle the back of your neck with a low-grade unease. I met Mark on Tinder last summer. His profile was fine. Average, really. A couple of pictures of him smiling, one with a dog, another hiking. He seemed like a normal, outdoorsy dude. He listed his job as a software engineer, which, okay, not exactly exciting, but reliable. We matched, chatted for a few days, and decided to meet for coffee. The date was unremarkable. He was a little quiet, a little awkward, but nothing that screamed red flag. We talked about our jobs, our hobbies, our favorite TV shows. He seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say, which was a nice change of pace from some of the other Tinder dates I'd been on. After the date, he texted me saying he had a good time and would like to see me again. I was on the fence, but I figured why not? Second dates are always less awkward. That's when I started noticing the photos. I went back to his Tinder profile to refresh my memory of what he looked like. He was pretty forgettable, honestly. And that's when I saw it. In each of his pictures, there was something slightly off. Not anything major, just little details that didn't quite fit. In the picture with the dog's eyes were blurred out, like someone had deliberately edited them out. I dismissed it as a weird stylistic choice. Maybe he was trying to protect the dog's privacy. It sounded ridiculous, but I couldn't think of another explanation. In the hiking photo, there was a figure in the background, barely visible in the trees. It looked like a person, but their face was obscured by shadows. Again, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just another hiker, but something about the way the figure was standing felt unnatural. The picture that really freaked me out was the close-up of him smiling. At first glance, it seemed like a normal, friendly photo, but when I looked closer, I noticed that his teeth were wrong. They were too perfect, too white, too uniform. Like he was wearing dentures, but not quite. Like they were someone else's teeth. And his eyes. They were dark, almost black, and they didn't seem to reflect any light. It was like he was staring into a void. I canceled the second date. I texted him saying I wasn't feeling well and didn't think I could make it. He texted back immediately, asking if I was okay. I said I was fine, just a little under the weather. He didn't respond. I blocked him on Tinder and tried to forget about it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong with that guy. A few weeks later, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw a post from a local animal shelter. They were looking for a missing dog, a golden retriever. The dog in Mark's Tinder picture looked exactly like the missing dog. I clicked on the comments and saw that several people were saying the same thing. Someone even posted a screenshot of Mark's Tinder profile. Then, a few days later, there was an article in the local news about a string of burglaries in the area. The police were looking for a suspect who fit Mark's description. They released a composite sketch, and it was definitely him. The article mentioned that the suspect had a history of mental illness and had been known to stalk his victims. That's when I realized how close I had come to becoming one of them. I changed my locks, installed a security system, and started carrying pepper spray. I still have nightmares about Mark's profile pictures. I wish someone had warned me about the subtly wrong ones. The ones that look normal at first glance, but after a while, reveal something truly terrifying. They're not always easy to spot, but if you pay close attention, you might just save yourself from a nightmare. Tinder became less a way to potentially find a date, but another reminder of this creepy event. It reminded me I will never find someone and may always have to live in fear of someone like Mark. It took a toll on my mental health, and I began seeing a therapist because of it. This is why I wish someone would have warned me about the profile pictures. Okay, so I've used Tinder on and off for years, you know, the usual. A few decent dates, a lot of boring conversations that fizzle out, the occasional weirdo. I thought I was pretty good at spotting red flags, at knowing when to cut my losses. But this one slipped past all my defenses. It started like any other match. His name was Alex, and his profile was pretty generic. Some hiking photos, a picture with a dog, the usual. He seemed normal enough, maybe a little quiet, but nothing alarming. We chatted for a few days, mostly small talk. He asked about my job, my hobbies, what I was looking for on Tinder. I gave the standard answers, trying to gauge if he was worth meeting in person. He was a little intense, maybe. He'd ask really specific questions about my routine, like what time I usually left for work, what route I took, if I usually went out on weekends. I brushed it off as him just trying to make conversation, trying to find common ground. Looking back, I want to kick myself. Anyway, we decided to meet for coffee. The date itself was fine. He was a little awkward, kept staring at me a little too intensely, but he was polite and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. There wasn't really any chemistry, so I figured that would be the end of it. I texted him that night, just the polite, I had a nice time, but I didn't really feel a spark message. He replied almost immediately, saying he understood and wished me luck. End of story, right? Wrong. A few days later, I started noticing things. Small things, almost unnoticeable. Like, I'd swear I left my keys on the kitchen counter, but they'd be on the coffee table. Or I'd come home from work, and the window would be slightly ajar, even though I was positive I'd closed it. I chalked it up to being forgetful, to the quirks of my old apartment building. But then things got weirder. I started getting messages from unknown numbers. Just random strings of numbers and letters, nothing I could decipher. They'd come at all hours of the day and night, and they were always unsettling. I blocked each number as it came in, but they kept coming from new ones. Then there were the emails. Subject lines like, "I see you," or "You look beautiful in blue." The content was always blank, but the creepiness was off the charts. I changed my email password, set up filters, but they still managed to get through. It was like someone was deliberately trying to mess with me. To get under my skin, I started feeling paranoid, like I was being watched. I'd find myself constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every little noise. I installed a security camera in my apartment, thinking that would ease my anxiety. But all it did was confirm my worst fears. A few nights after I installed the camera, I checked the footage. There was nothing for the first few hours, just my empty apartment. But then, around 3 a.m., I saw it. A figure moving in the shadows, just barely visible in the dim light. It was a man, standing in my living room, just staring at the camera. He was wearing a hoodie, so I couldn't see his face, but I could tell he was tall and lanky. My blood ran cold. I watched the footage over and over, trying to make sense of it. Who was this guy? How did he get in? And then it hit me. There was something familiar about his posture, about the way he moved. I paused the video, zoomed in as much as I could, and enhanced the image. And that's when I saw it. A small detail, barely visible in the shadows, but enough to confirm my suspicions. A distinctive birthmark on his hand, the same birthmark I'd noticed on Alex during our coffee date. I thought it was just my imagination until I saw the security footage. I didn't sleep that night. I spent the entire night huddled in my closet, clutching my phone, waiting for the sun to rise. As soon as it was light out, I went to the police. I showed them the footage, the messages, the emails. They took my statement, but they seemed skeptical. They said there wasn't enough evidence to make an arrest, that it could just be a coincidence. I felt so frustrated, so helpless. I knew it was him, I just couldn't prove it. I moved out of my apartment that day. I didn't even bother packing. I just grabbed a few essentials and left everything else behind. I went to stay with my sister, telling her everything that had happened. She was supportive and understanding, but I could tell she was worried about me. I changed my phone number again, created a new email address, and scrubbed my social media accounts. I felt like I was living in a movie, like I was being hunted. For months, I was terrified. I avoided going out alone. I changed my routines. I constantly looked over my shoulder. I was a shell of my former self. Eventually, the messages and emails stopped. I haven't seen Alex since that coffee date, but the fear still lingers. I still have nightmares about that night, about the figure in my living room. I still check my locks multiple times before bed. I still jump at every unexpected noise. I'll never use Tinder again, and I'll never forget the feeling of knowing that someone was watching me, that someone had violated my privacy, that someone was capable of such chilling behavior. It wasn't just my imagination. It was real, and that's the scariest part of all. Okay, so, I'm still messed up over this Tinder experience, and I swear, it started so normally. Like, ridiculously normal. I was recently single, trying to get back into the dating game, and all my friends were pushing me to try Tinder. I'd swiped on a bunch of guys, the usual mix of okay pics and cheesy bios. Then I matched with Liam. He was cute, in a nerdy, glasses-wearing kind of way. His profile said he was a musician and loved hiking. Seemed harmless, right? The first few messages were totally vanilla. Hey, how's your day going? What kind of music do you play? We talked about our favorite bands, hiking trails, dumb stuff. He seemed genuinely interested, not just looking for a hookup, which was refreshing. After a couple of days of chatting, he suggested we meet up for coffee. Again, totally normal. We met at a cafe near my apartment. He was exactly as he looked in his pictures, maybe a little taller. The conversation flowed easily. We talked about our jobs, our families, travel experiences, the usual first date stuff. He was funny, engaging, and actually listened when I talked. I was starting to think, okay, maybe Tinder isn't a complete dumpster fire after all. Then, he started asking about my dreams. Not like career aspirations, but actual dreams. Do you remember your dreams often? He asked, sipping his latte. What are they usually like? I told him I had pretty vivid dreams, sometimes bordering on nightmares. I didn't go into detail, just mentioned that they were often bizarre and unsettling. He seemed really interested. Do you ever feel like your dreams are trying to tell you something? He asked, his eyes kind of intense. I laughed it off. Nah, I think it's just my brain processing the day's events in weird ways. But he didn't laugh. He just nodded slowly, like he was considering something. After coffee, we walked around the park for a bit. He pointed out different plants and told me their names. He seemed to know a lot about botany, which I found surprisingly attractive. As we were walking, he started talking about lucid dreaming, the ability to control your dreams. He said he'd been practicing it for years. It's amazing, he said, his voice getting a little hushed. You can create entire worlds in your mind, experience anything you want. You can even meet people in your dreams that you've never met in real life. I was intrigued, but also a little creeped out. It felt like he was getting a little too intense about the whole dream thing. We ended the date with a hug, and he texted me later that night, saying he had a great time and wanted to see me again. I said sure, but I was starting to feel a little uneasy. Something about his obsession with dreams felt off. The next few days, our texts were mostly about dreams. He kept asking me about mine, probing for details. He wanted to know about the people in my dreams, the places, the emotions I felt. I started censoring myself, not wanting to give him too much information. Then, one night, I had a really strange dream. I was in a forest, dark and silent. I felt like I was being watched. Then I saw him, Liam. He was standing in the distance, just staring at me. He wasn't smiling or waving, just staring with this intense, unsettling look in his eyes. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. I brushed it off as just a coincidence, but the next night, I had the same dream. Same forest, same Liam, same unsettling stare. This time, he started walking towards me. Slowly, deliberately. I tried to run, but my legs felt like lead. I woke up again, terrified. I decided to confront him. I texted him the next day. Hey, Liam, I need to ask you something. Have you been dreaming about me? He replied almost immediately. Actually, yes. It's kind of weird, but I've been having these recurring dreams where we're together. I was freaked out. What do you mean, together? I texted back. He didn't reply for a long time. Finally, he sent a message. We're in a forest. You're scared, but I'm there to protect you. I felt like I was going to throw up. I blocked him immediately. I deleted his number, unmatched him on Tinder, and tried to forget about the whole thing. But the dreams didn't stop. Night after night, I was back in that forest, with Liam getting closer and closer. He never touched me, never spoke, just stared. But the feeling of dread was overwhelming. I started having trouble sleeping. I was exhausted and anxious all the time. I told my friends about it, but they just said I was being paranoid. It's just a coincidence, they said. He's probably just a weirdo. But I knew it was more than that. I felt like he was invading my mind, controlling my dreams. One night, I decided to try lucid dreaming myself. I figured if he could enter my dreams, maybe I could enter his. I spent hours researching techniques online, trying to learn how to control my dreams. That night, I went to bed determined. It took a while, but eventually, I realized I was dreaming. I was in the forest, the same forest I'd been dreaming about for weeks. Liam was there, standing in the distance, staring. This time, I wasn't scared. I knew I was in control. I walked towards him, slowly, deliberately. As I got closer, his expression changed. He looked confused, then scared. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "This is my dream." "No," I said, my voice clear and strong. "This is my dream now." I focused all my energy on changing the scene. The forest started to fade, replaced by a bright, sunny meadow. Liam started to scream, his body flickering like a glitch in a video game. Then I woke up. I haven't had the dream since. I still don't know what Liam was doing or how he was doing it, but I know that he was trying to control me, to invade my mind. I'm still shaken up by the whole experience, and I'm definitely taking a break from Tinder for a while. Some connections aren't worth making. I can't even sleep with the lights off anymore. I didn't realize the danger I was in until I saw the news report. It was a grainy, pixelated image on the screen, a mugshot of a man I knew only as Jake from Tinder. The headline screamed something about a series of abductions, and the accompanying details sent a shard of ice straight through my heart. Let me rewind. I am a pretty cautious person generally. I met my husband online, so I'm no stranger to the world of digital dating, but I had never used Tinder. I had never tried Tinder before. After my divorce, a friend convinced me to try Tinder, promising it was a fun, low-pressure way to meet people. Swiping felt silly at first, like some kind of superficial game, but I got into the swing of it eventually. I was upfront about what I was looking for: companionship, maybe someone to go to movies with. No expectations. Jake seemed normal. He had a generic but pleasant profile, hiking pictures, a shot of him with a dog, a claim that he loved good coffee, and even better conversation. Our initial chats were unremarkable. He asked about my job, my hobbies, my favorite movies, the usual getting-to-know-you stuff. We seemed to have a few things in common, and he was consistently polite and engaging. We talked for about a week before he suggested meeting up. We agreed on a coffee shop near my apartment. It was a public place, broad daylight. I even told a coworker I was going and shared Jake's picture with her, just in case. Safety precautions 101. The coffee date was fine. He was a little less charming in person than he was online. A bit more intense, maybe. He asked a lot of personal questions, digging deeper than I was comfortable with so early on. Where did I live exactly? Did I live alone? Did I have any family nearby? I brushed off the questions, attributing it to nerves. I was definitely more nervous than usual. I hadn't been on a date in a long time. He seemed so genuine in the photos, and I was curious about his life. We talked for about 2 hours, and when he suggested we continue the date at his place to watch a movie, I politely declined. I made up an excuse about having an early start the next day. He seemed disappointed, but didn't push it. He walked me back to my car, gave me a quick hug, and said he'd text me. He did text me, relentlessly. For the next few days, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from him. Good morning texts, random questions throughout the day, and increasingly insistent invitations to come over. I started to feel suffocated. I tried to gently let him down, telling him I wasn't really looking for anything serious right now. He didn't take it well. The messages became more frequent, more demanding. He started showing up at the coffee shop where I worked, just happening to be in the area. I felt like I was being watched. I blocked his number, hoping that would be the end of it. Then came the news report. The mugshot was unmistakable Jake, but with a colder, harder edge than I remembered. The details were horrifying. He was suspected of kidnapping and assaulting several women in the area. The police believed he was using dating apps to lure his victims. My blood ran cold. I realized that the personal questions, The insistence on knowing where I lived, the constant attention. It wasn't just awkward dating behavior. It was calculated. He was grooming me, gathering information. I blocked him on all platforms. I felt sick. How could I have been so blind? How could I have almost walked into that trap? I had a pit in my stomach when I realized the truth. I was almost one of his victims. I contacted the police and gave them everything I knew. They took my statement and thanked me for coming forward. They said I wasn't the first woman to report similar experiences with him. The worst part is the feeling of violation. I used to think I was a good judge of character, but now I question everything. I feel exposed, vulnerable. I deleted all my dating apps and can't imagine going near them again. I barely sleep. I have horrible nightmares. I didn't realize the danger I was in until I saw his face on the news. And I know that I'll be living with that realization for a very long time. It's a constant reminder of how easily trust can be exploited and how quickly a harmless swipe can turn into a nightmare. It wasn't love or like. It was just pure evil. I never thought this would happen to me. But there I was, scrolling through Tinder on a random Tuesday night, trying to fend off the boredom that always seemed to creep in after work. I wasn't really looking for anything serious, just someone to grab a drink with, maybe watch a movie. The usual. I matched with this guy named Alex. He seemed pretty normal at first glance. Decent photos, not too posed, not too blurry. A bio that mentioned his love for hiking and craft beer. Our initial conversations were easy, lighthearted. We talked about our jobs, our favorite music, the upcoming local beer festival. Nothing out of the ordinary. We decided to meet up for a drink at a brewery near my apartment. He seemed a little nervous when he arrived, fidgeting with his hands and avoiding eye contact. But I figured it was just first-date jitters. We ordered our beers, and the conversation flowed pretty well. He was a good listener, and even made me laugh a few times. But there were these little things, subtle at first, that started to make me feel uneasy. He kept asking me about my apartment. Not just general questions like, "Do you like your place?" but specific details. What floor are you on? How many bedrooms do you have? Do you have a roommate? I tried to brush it off, chalking it up to harmless curiosity, but the questions kept coming. Then, he started talking about my job. He asked where I worked, what my hours were, if I ever worked late. He even asked if I walked home from work or took public transportation. It felt like he was trying to piece together my routine, my movements. I started getting this creeping feeling that I was being sized up. Not in a romantic way, but in a predatory way. My instincts were screaming at me to get out of there, but I didn't want to overreact. Maybe I was just being paranoid. I decided to cut the date short. I told him I had an early meeting the next morning and needed to head home. He seemed disappointed, but didn't argue. He walked me back towards my apartment, and that's when things took a turn for the worse. As we were walking, he started talking about how much he liked me, how he felt a real connection. It was way too much, way too fast. I tried to politely tell him that I wasn't sure if I felt the same way, but he wouldn't let it go. He kept pressing me, telling me that we were meant to be together. We reached the entrance to my apartment building, and I quickly said goodbye, trying to slip inside. But he grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly tight. He leaned in close, his face inches from mine, and whispered, "I know you want me too." I yanked my arm away and ran inside, fumbling with my keys as I tried to unlock the door. I could feel his eyes on me, burning into my back. I finally got the door open, slammed it shut, and locked it behind me. I peeked through the peephole, and he was still standing there, staring at my door. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every creak of the building, every passing car, sent shivers down my spine. I kept imagining him standing outside, watching, waiting. The next day, I blocked his number and unmatched him on Tinder. I hoped that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. A few days later, I started getting weird phone calls. The caller ID showed up as unknown, and when I answered, there was just silence on the other end. I blocked the numbers, but the calls kept coming from different numbers. Then, I started noticing things out of place in my apartment. A book that had been moved, a window that I was sure I had closed. Nothing major, but enough to make me feel uneasy. I chalked it up to my own forgetfulness, but the feeling that I was being watched wouldn't go away. One evening, I came home from work and found a note on my door. It was handwritten, and it simply said, "I'm watching you." I panicked. This was no longer just paranoia. This was real. I called the police, but they said there wasn't much they could do without any concrete evidence. They suggested I install security cameras and be more careful about who I met online. I spent the next few weeks living in a state of constant fear. I installed cameras, changed my locks, and started carrying pepper spray everywhere I went. I avoided going out alone, and I always made sure to tell someone where I was going and when I would be back. One night, I was sitting in my living room, watching TV, when I heard a noise outside my window. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I peeked through the blinds, and there he was, Alex, standing on the sidewalk, staring up at my window. I screamed and ran to the phone, calling the police. This time, they took me seriously. They arrived within minutes and apprehended him. He didn't resist, didn't say a word. It turned out that Alex had a history of stalking and harassment. He had been using Tinder to find potential victims, and I was one of them. He had been following me, learning my routine, and waiting for the right moment to make his move. I'm still shaken up by the whole experience. I deleted Tinder and haven't used a dating app since. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if he's still out there, watching. I never thought this would happen to me. I thought I was being careful, that I could spot a creep from a mile away. But I was wrong, and now I'm paying the price. The notification popped up on my phone. It's a match. Followed by a little animated heart. Standard Tinder stuff. I was bored one Saturday night, swiping through profiles, not really expecting much. His profile was pretty generic. A couple of decent-looking selfies, a picture with a dog, the usual fluent in sarcasm bio. His name was Mark. We chatted for a bit, mostly about music and movies, and he seemed normal enough, maybe even a little charming. He suggested meeting up for a drink. I wasn't opposed, so we made plans to meet at a bar near my apartment. I sent a screenshot of his profile to my best friend, Sarah, just in case, standard safety precaution. The bar was crowded, loud music, the typical Saturday night scene. I spotted Mark standing near the entrance. He looked different from his pictures, taller and maybe a little gaunt, but I brushed it off. Maybe the lighting was weird. We ordered drinks, and the conversation started out okay. He asked about my job, my hobbies, the usual getting to know you stuff. But then things started to shift. He started asking more personal questions, like where I lived exactly, if I lived alone, if I had any roommates. Red flags started popping up, but I tried to play it cool, giving vague answers and steering the conversation back to lighter topics. He kept pushing, though. He wanted to know details about my apartment building, how secure it was, if there were security cameras. I started to feel really uncomfortable, like I was being interrogated rather than having a casual date. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, and I texted Sarah. This guy is creeping me out. Can you call me in like 10 minutes and pretend there's an emergency? She replied immediately, on it. When I came back to the table, Mark was gone. My drink was still there, untouched. I waited for a few minutes, thinking maybe he went to the bathroom too, but he didn't come back. I was starting to get really anxious. Then my phone rang. It was Sarah. Hey, sorry to bother you, she said, but there's a problem at the office, and they need you to come in right away. I played along, acting all stressed and apologetic to the empty chair where Mark had been sitting. I gathered my things and practically ran out of the bar, relieved to be getting out of there. I called Sarah back as soon as I was outside. That guy totally bailed, I said. He was being so weird, asking all these questions about my apartment. I think I dodged a bullet. Seriously, Sarah said. That's messed up. But hey, at least you're safe now. I agreed, feeling grateful for my friend and my instincts. I went home, locked all the doors and windows, and tried to shake off the uneasy feeling. I couldn't sleep that night. Every little noise made me jump. I kept replaying the evening in my head, wondering what Mark's deal was. Was he just socially awkward, or was there something more sinister going on? I eventually drifted off to sleep, but my dreams were filled with shadowy figures and whispered threats. The next morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of me sleeping in my bed. The curtains were open, and the photo was taken from outside my window. The text read, "You look so peaceful when you're sleeping." I screamed. I ran to the window and slammed the curtains shut. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I called the police, but they said there wasn't much they could do without more evidence. They took a report and promised to patrol the area, but I felt completely helpless. I spent the next few weeks living in a state of constant fear. I installed security cameras, changed my locks, and stayed with Sarah whenever I could. I deleted all my dating apps and vowed never to meet anyone online again. I felt violated and vulnerable, like my privacy had been shattered. Then, a few months later, I saw a news report about a string of burglaries in my neighborhood. The police had arrested a suspect, and his picture flashed across the screen. It was Mark. They said he had been using dating apps to target women, gathering information about their homes and routines before breaking in. A wave of nausea washed over me. It wasn't just about a creepy date. He had been planning to break into my apartment. I shuddered to think what might have happened if I hadn't trusted my instincts and gotten out of that bar. If Sarah hadn't called, if I hadn't woken up. The events of that night will stay with me forever, a constant reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the surface of the digital world. I was lucky, I know that, but the feeling of being watched, of being targeted, still lingers. I'll never look at online dating the same way again.